What I absolutely refuse to let happen is being a man marries a wonderful wife. I have kids now, and I tell my kids, sorry, you can't go see your granddad because we don't talk anymore. There's no way in the world I'm going to let it continue to roll over. I can't change the past, but we can definitely make new memories from this point forward. And it's the hardest thing for any child to do because we do have a lot of pain. A lot of that pain, unfortunately, will never be answered. But what you can do is definitely have better memories going forward.
Welcome to Fatherhood Voices, breaking the toxic cycle. Dive in as real dads bear all, the mess-ups, make-ups, and every heartfelt moment in between. It's raw, it's real, and it might just change the way you see family.
Welcome to another episode of Fatherhood Voices. Now, today I have a special guest, and it's pretty unique how this experience happened. I was spending some one-on-one time with my daughter and her boyfriend just in the last week, and we just happened to stop by a open mic night in Fullerton, and I saw someone was going up, and they started talking about this song that they wrote, and I just heard something about little girls and how they struggled growing up as children, and something to the effect the dad wasn't in their life. And it just kind of piqued my interest because of Fatherhood Voices. I grabbed my phone right away and I recorded the song, and wow, what an amazing and powerful song. And you will hear it at the end of this podcast. So with me, a special guest today from the streets of Fullerton, and taking his guitar and sharing his musical vibes all over, Joseph George. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, when you did that impromptu the song and you started kind of sharing with the audience your reasoning for writing this song,
Right.
It grabbed my attention right away, especially because this movement with Fatherhood Voices, and the goal is to break the toxic cycle between fathers and their children.
Mm-hmm.
But also we want to hear the voices of children, so that fathers can see the damage that they're causing their kids when they don't show up, when they abandon them, when they neglect them. And, I remember hearing you talk about that song and where the inspiration came. And after it was over, I was eager to talk to you. And I said, hey, what's your name? And I think my first question was, where did this inspiration come from this song?
Right.
And what you said just blew my mind. So what was the inspiration? What's the name of the song?
Right.
And then tell me the inspiration behind this song.
Of course. So the song is called Carving Away. Little short backstory behind it is you have these two kids that one of them's in high school, and he and his younger sister, who's in elementary school, she's an orphan, and in order to keep them together, he's been forging all of the signatures, putting them through school, fundraising money however he can just to keep them together. And so they're homeless going through it. And so a lot of that is just him trying to figure out, how can I take care of my sister? And so with the song Carving Away, it's the point in the musical where he comes home one day and his sister will always usually greet him, hi, how are you? Can we talk? Can we hang out? What's for dinner today? But when he comes home this time, she realizes he's all beaten and bruised and he has no money. There's no food. And so she looks at him and then she's like, I'm actually just feeling kind of tired today. I want to go to bed. And that's in the moment when he realizes she's not ignorant of the life that we're actually living, because he's been trying to paint the whole life is good, we're in a Neverland. But then it's like it's more like, not that he got caught, but he realizes that he had already been caught when she's like, I'm not hungry. It's okay. I just want to go to bed. Wow.
And this older brother was you?
Yeah. I mean, we weren't homeless, but mine is more of the exaggerated, because for me growing up, I'm one of 9 siblings. And I'm number 5 in the mix. And so when I was younger, I remember having both of my parents to an extent. But then I want to say about elementary school to middle school, that's when when I had started noticing for myself that things were pretty rough. By the time I got into about high school, midway through, my parents had been separated. It was kind of an on and off between there. And so because I still had my younger 3 siblings to care for while I was still in high school, one of the things that I had just kind of started going through was what I'll say is more of a phase of I need to take care of myself. I can't be immature. I can't complain about the things that are going around me. It wasn't so much a matter of like I have to be the man of the house, but it's just I have to not be a problem.
Wow. So you grew up in Fullerton, or where'd you grow up at?
Uh,
And
yeah. I grew up in a little bit of a mix. Los Angeles. I want to say most of my childhood was more so in Whittier. Uh, moved around. See maybe like 3 or 4 times. My youngest years, I do not have much memory of,
Mhm.
but you know how when you're younger, you feel like there's like just like some like a kind of like click, and then it's like, oh, I'm awake now. I grew up in Whittier. That's where it felt like it was for me. As soon as I landed in Whittier, of like this is your childhood.
Okay. And you said you have 9 siblings.
Yeah.
All grew up together?
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah. Uh, very separate. The oldest two are from my dad's side, and then the other 8 are from my mom. And so it was if there was a point, I may not remember it clearly, but for the time where it was all 8 of us in a 3-bedroom house, parents would have one room, and then you have 5 boys in one room, and then 3 girls in the other room. It was pretty crazy.
So let me ask you a question. So how was life growing up? So let's talk about maybe elementary and junior high school. So you're young, you have other siblings.
Mhm,
How many are in the house? And what's life look like for Joseph with mom and dad still in the picture at this?
mhm. Yeah, so elementary school for me personally, and I want to definitely say like it's from my experience. My other siblings, they definitely I want to say have their own experiences of like how they did it. For me, it was different in the sense of knowing it wasn't intentional, but feeling that I had to make a place for myself, not being welcome to other places. Like, okay, in your family, you're too old to hang out with the younger kids, but you're too young to hang out with the bigger kids. So it kind of, when I was in elementary school, was a lot of me, where do I belong kind of a thing. And how that fit into the familial picture was, unfortunately, many times, like, I knew that both my parents had work, and so I was left at school a lot. I think that's where I got a little bit of a knack for picking up something, and so I ended up wandering into a room, finding a piano, and it was just like, oh, I saw this on TV one time. Let's see how it works.
Wow. And you bring up an interesting common problem that happens when there's a lot of siblings, and especially the ones in the middle that are just kind of bouncing around, not too old, not too young, and they're just kind of looking for that place of belonging.
Hmm.
That's actually very common and something that doesn't get talked about a lot. Now, so you just started to self-discover.
Mhm.
Music was one of your callings.
Yeah.
How was, with all the siblings, I know you guys didn't all live together at the same time, but how was your relationship with your father?
It's very on my part. It was very more so quiet. Pretty sure authoritarian is the right word. It was more of the I know that that's the father figure in the house, and how it was demonstrated. Because at the time, my older siblings, children are more. What I see is what I'll imitate. Having older siblings and see how they had a respect toward my dad, or reverence toward him. That's how I come, that's how I had personally come to pay attention to him with like respect and like, hi, how are you? Firm handshakes, eye contact, uh, greetings, and things like that. But for the personal part, it was more so inner me was like, I don't feel like I could have the relationship that I saw with other kids that they had. In that sense, it was more me listening as opposed to what are your thoughts on this.
Hmm.
So it'd be say we're talking about a conversation between like a school and how are your grades doing, maybe about 3 4 sentences of like, okay, it's going here, but then I would get a lot more of listen, 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 as opposed to let me be heard.
And so do you think that was very important looking back at your early childhood years that you wanted to be heard more?
Yeah, definitely. That was probably with like me toward all of my siblings of like, hey, like I want you guys to listen to me. I was like, yeah, yeah, later. I'm like, okay.
Wow. So how did you express yourself? How did you make yourself um, heard or known as a child?
I think that's what I would say is the scary part is that I didn't. Um, yeah, a lot of it. I think there's a common conception of in the stories you see the kid struggles, someone comes along, or he figures something out, and then he gets out of it. For me, it was more so staying in it. Um, I remember at 12 years old, I had told myself, and this was after listening to an argument where I had said, I will deal with this until I don't have to. And when I no longer have to deal with this, I won't. And the way that I'll deal with it is by disassociating myself and being the person that can just kind of, if you're already feeling not seen, instead of making it a problem as far as, oh my gosh, I want to be seen, why don't you immerse yourself into it and then just kind of go through that way until you don't have to. So I didn't practice speaking up or being heard until like way later into like my early 20s of it actually becoming a problem when my mentor was like, no, you need to practice speaking up. It's a problem and you have a lot of things to say and they're good things. Stop pulling back because you're doing a disservice to yourself and to others.
And that leads me to my next question, because a lot of children feel this way, and then growing up, it becomes an obstacle as they go into adulthood and as they go into their careers and professions, and they live in silence and they never get to reach their full potential. So I know you just kind of started to touch on it, but do you feel that you finally are being heard? Or is that still a work in progress? Because there are some people that will go through life and will never be
Right.
heard. And there's no right or wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but it starts as a child.
I would say not yet. And that's definitely more so on me of being comfortable with speaking on things, expressing things that people aren't comfortable with. So a perfect example is we're talking, let's say you're like a teacher or professor of mine and you say something that I don't agree with. My instinct from childhood that still bleeds into today is even if I don't agree with you, it's a quote, a mind against its will is of the same opinion still. So it's like, okay, I won't say it to your face, but I'm probably going to go do something different behind your back. And a lot of that is because I'm still working toward not only do you have something to say, but what you have to say is important and it does and can and will affect things.
So did you do that growing up?
Yeah.
Okay.
100,000%.
Okay. So now, could that be an act of defiance against
Yeah.
your parents?
Yeah, it was the defying in the smallest ways that I could. I still want to say that my parents did raise me well. Like there was, I have some other siblings where it was like, okay, you're getting in trouble for this, you're getting in trouble for this one. But I remember one time I snuck outside of the house, and it was the weird act of defiance, but active defiance with good intent because I snuck outside of my house to go and water my neighbor's grass. And I got back, my dad was like, what are you doing? Like you're going at like 2 a.m. And I was just like, I promised the neighbor like I was gonna go water his grass. Yeah. My mom and my dad, they knew that it's like, okay, this is the kid who like brings home like little squirrels and birds and dogs. It's like, hey, he needs help. So it was kind of like the whole, I know you're telling the truth. I'm trying to figure out how to be mad at you.
What did punishments look like for you?
Spankings and standards. Yeah, but I will still forever to this day say I'm like, yes, I'm still in favor of people spanking their kids. I do see a difference between the older ones that were spanked, the other ones that weren't spanked. They all turned out well, but I see the difference in how they were raised and how that outlook affects their relationship with like society and things in life. When I was younger, it was a lot of standards because again, at the time it's 4 boys. So it's like, okay, my dad's probably going to get worn out by the third one. So if I come in last, but by that time, I think about 12, 11 or 12, I stopped getting spankings, and it was more so because I stopped fighting back outward. It's like, okay, if I do this way, then I don't have to deal with that. Was there a visible pain? Definitely of I don't like what I'm doing. I'm choosing to agree with going on, but I was more so reluctant to go toward it because do you want to go through like a spanking and then like it wasn't the spanking that was bad per se, it was the lecture behind it.
And why do you say it was a lecture that was worse than the spanking?
Yeah. Growing up, we're always taught sticks and stones can break your bones, but words will never hurt you. I remember more lectures and conversations as opposed to the spankings. Those things forget. It's kind of like you fall down, you scrape your knee, and that's it. But the words, those ones, I feel like echo with you through the years. And those, even especially as a child, unfortunately, you don't have control over what sticks and what doesn't stick with people. I think psychologically, as human beings, we unfortunately tend to lean more towards the negative of, I remember that one time my dad did this thing to me, and then he said this. What was done probably won't be remembered much, but the words will definitely stick.
Wow. Powerful.
Yeah.
Can you, because having all these, siblings, what's a special memory? Do you have a special memory that stands out to you with your dad, or was he just always too busy?
One in particular, and again, this is one of those completely random memories, but I had to have been about 4 or 5 years old, and I think my dad, he had just gotten a haircut, and he had no hair on the top of his head, and I was like, oh, I wonder. Me being a kid, I was like, I just kind of want to like touch his head, but then after that, I just like sat on his lap and I just like laid there, and it was me and my younger sister that were just like laying there, and I don't know what was going on outside of that, but it was a moment of just like I'm just resting here with my dad, and it's me, my younger sister, and my dad, and then my mom was like in the kitchen cooking. So it's like this is, yeah.
Wow. So, were there a lot of those moments?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so that, wow. So sometimes it's the smallest things that can have the most impactful memory.
Mm-hmm.
Something as simple as just laying there with your dad and being in the moment. That's powerful. That's powerful because especially as fathers, we get so consumed in our day-to-day lives. Just hearing that, you're 25 years old now?
27.
27. And to reflect on a powerful memory with your dad, and it wasn't going fishing, it wasn't going to an amusement park, but it was you and your sister just laying on your dad's. Wow. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Because that right there is going to be a teaching moment for fathers to know that it's not always about materialistic things. It's not always going places. Sometimes it's just being present, being in the moment. And that right there, 27 years later, when I asked you, what was a moment that stands out for you? It was that time with your father.
Yeah.
There's medicine there for fathers there. Definitely you shared that. How's your relationship with your dad these days?
Pretty good. Definitely still able to talk with him. I can always call him. He's always sending me text messages like, hey, I love you, son. Great and powerful king, man of God, a doctor. I know you're going to do great things. And for me, it's good that I'm in a place of being able to take that. I was talking with one of my friends about it yesterday I was like, hey, like, whatever kind of relationship that I had with my dad personally when I was younger, I don't care if it was good or bad, but I want to make sure that growing up I have a relationship, because one day I do want to have kids. And what I absolutely refuse to let happen is being a man, marries a wonderful wife, I have kids now, and I tell my kids, sorry, you can't go see your dad because, or you can't go see your granddad because we don't talk anymore. It's like, there's no way in the world I'm going to kind of like let it continue to roll over. It was like, my friend had asked me, she was like, but what if like you never like get the apology? What if you never get the sorry? What if you never get to go back and like actually have a conversation like, hey, you hurt me here, you did these things, I want an apology for all. And it's like, to an extent, I get it. You do want that closure, you do want the apology, you do want that conversation. But if you never get it, are you going to stop your life and everything that comes after you because of that one thing that you didn't get? Or can you let it go and then just say that, can we sit down? Can we have coffee? I can't change the past, but we can definitely make new memories from this point forward. And it's the hardest thing for any child to do, because we do have a lot of pain. A lot of that pain, unfortunately, will never be answered. But what you can do is definitely have better memories going forward.
Wow, you're dropping some words of wisdom today. I think I need to be, you need to be sitting over here. You know, I'm getting some great clips here, you know? You know, as children, we have expectations on how we want to be loved,
Mm-hmm.
how we want to be nurtured, how we want to be talked to. And a lot of this ideology comes from movies, TV shows, seeing friends or other family members that have families that are intact. And we hold our parents to these expectations that sometimes are unrealistic. And unrealistic because, and I'm going to just use, and I don't want to dismiss mothers, but I could Fatherhood Voices, so I'm going to talk about the father. Fathers only love the way they know how to love, based on how they were raised by their father. And that love transmutes to how their father loved their father. So it goes from father to grandfather to great-grandfather, great-grandfather. So if you go down into a lineage, a family lineage of fathers that don't know how to love, and nobody ever breaks that cycle, then what happens, it's just a cycle.
Right.
You know, and it's, you know, these beautiful words you said that no matter what, even if I don't get the apology or the answers that I need from the past, what you're basically saying is, I'm choosing to break the toxic cycle with my children.
Right.
You know, yes, I have a relationship with my father, but if I didn't, hypothetically, you're saying you would sit down and say, hey, the past is the past, but we need to, you know, do this differently. So I applaud you for that, especially for being such a young man and coming to those words of wisdom so early in life, because it took me almost 50 years to get to that point. You know, my relationship with my dad wasn't the best growing up, and we've been on a process of healing, and a lot of it had to do with ego. The ego plays a big role. It's my ego, his ego, and who's going to break first, who's going to pick up the phone and call, who's going to stop keeping score, because we keep score.
Right.
And yeah, so I'm just very powerful that you shared, because it just falls in line with this ancestral lineage of father trauma and then breaking the cycle. And you now just taking a stand and saying, hey, regardless, my kids are going to have a relationship with their grandfather. You know, I just became a grandfather a couple of months ago. And there's a saying that says that grandfather's love is different than a father's love. And I never understood it till now. And as grandparents, it's almost like a do-over. It's almost like a do-over.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we may have like fucked shit up, you know, with our kids, and maybe we weren't there. But then with the grandkids, it's the opportunity to make up. And I've had fathers on who said, yeah, my childhood was horrendous, but my father's showing up for my child. And there's healing there. There's healing, because through the healing, through the father now the grandfather showing up for their child, there's a healing happening between son and father. So it's cyclical the way it happens. But yeah, so I just wanted to
Yeah,
share.
I do. I see that definitely. I think something that I also see was again because I had 9 siblings, having it from the beginning of like the age gap, right? Because my oldest sister, she's in her mid 30s, 36, 37. My younger sister's like 19, 20. So it's almost like 3 generations apart in a sense. And there's a difference in the parenting style between the oldest and the youngest. Um, the oldest was more like work for it, work for it, work for it. You'll get it. Congratulations, you did it. The youngest, it was more like, hey, let me provide you with where I can. Oh, do you need help? Can I go in this? It wasn't like that 24/7, but it was the oldest saw it and it was just like, hey, that's not fair. That's not fair. And even I, unfortunately, I was a part of that of like, hey, when I was a kid, like I went through these things, so therefore you have to. It's just like you said, it is a do-over. And I think maybe you can speak for this, but part of the hard part of being the father that has the kid, and you have your dad and the grandfather wants to do over with his grandson. It's like you're kind of witnessing that's the dad I never had.
You're right, and a big part of it is when you're a father and you have multiple children. The first one, you always have these goals and aspirations and kind of chart out the plan, and you're going to go to college and you're going to do this. Do that. Then by the second one, you get more lax. The rules get more lax. By the third, fourth one, you're tired. And it's like, do whatever the flip you want. And so usually the middle one's like lost, like, okay,
Like, where do I go from here?
And
It's like,
exactly.
you have a middle one? No, I'm kidding.
And the youngest is just like all jacked up because they just got no structure, and so. But it's a common pattern
Yeah.
even in my household, from structure to lax to I don't whatever, do whatever, So, wow. So let me ask you a question. Now you're 27.
Mhm.
You have these profound words of wisdom, especially in how you're approaching your life growing up, and then how your interaction is with your father and so forth. If you could, you could do this at any time, have that conversation with your father because you're on speaking terms. But if you could go back to little Joseph when he was probably at that part where he felt like he really wasn't heard, where you just felt like, hey, what about me? What would have been some things, or what would you have said to your father to just say like, hey, this is what I need from you. This is how I need you to show up, or this is how I need to be heard. What would you have said to him back then? Because what you're about to say right now is going to help fathers that are right now dealing with their young children that are probably in that space.
Think I would ask that, like, speaking to my dad, I was like, hey, can you just listen to me? Not at some points, it wasn't the input, but don't help, don't tell me anything. Can you just listen for right now? Yeah, I was talking to my mentor about it. This was a while back, but he had asked me, got into that I was unable to recall any point in my life where I had ever had an argument with my dad. And it was not because I agreed with him on everything. It was because I felt as though I couldn't speak against anything. And so me being younger, me would have genuinely just been, more than anything, I don't care about the money. I don't care about the materialistic things, the birthdays, all of that, everything that's been missing from my life. If I get time with you in place of any of that, that would change everything about everything in my life. Between how did you learn to shave, how did you learn to tie a tie? Uh, how did you learn to talk to girls? How did you learn about all of these things? And it's the time, because if for me, a father that spends time with his kids and a kid can remember, I remember laughing with my dad about this. I remember going to my dad about these things, and he would sit there and he would listen to me. When a kid can say, my dad was there for me, those are the words that I think I would want to tell my dad, can you listen to me? So then when I got older, when people ask me, it's like, hey, so how was it growing up? That I would be able to say, my dad was there for me.
Wow. I'm just gonna recap that and clarify it, because I think there's some powerful notes. So what you're saying is that it wasn't about the birthday parties. It wasn't about any of the stuff on the surface. It was the things of teach me how to shave,
Mm-hmm.
how to talk to girls. It's that one-on-one bonding time
Right.
where you're almost like your dad's educating you on transitioning from childhood
Right.
into young adulthood. And that's what you want. That's what you would have wanted from me.
Yeah.
Did you get any of that?
Yes, but from random people.
Mm.
There was a lot of me growing up was little nuggets of being a curious child initially, but then knowing that the life that I saw ahead of me, looking at my older siblings, I was like, I don't want that life. And having, again, several older siblings, I had a lot to choose from. And then of all of them, it's like, I don't want that. So then my other option was, well, go find something that you do like. Go find a lifestyle that you do like. Go find a person or people in general that just, they show you something different. Because from a young age is when I had learned that words do not mean much, but action is completely different. And so I would go to my teacher, and he had taught me resilience with I was the slowest writer in school. I got in trouble a lot. My parents never heard about it because my teacher understood. He was like, they do have a lot of kids. I've taught several of your older siblings growing up. I see where they're coming from. I'm not going to tell them a lot of the things that you do, but we are going to talk about a lot of the things that you're doing. And so he would sit with me, and then one day he was like, why are you so upset? Why are you always falling asleep in class and things like that? And for me, I felt like giving up at that time, because I was like, why would I try? I'm already the slowest writer. I'm not going to get any faster than this. And then several years later, I found out, I was like, oh, it's because you have dyslexia. I was like, oh, okay, all right. So I'm a normal human being. But he forbade me giving excuses. He was like, I don't care how much time it takes you. I don't care how slow you are. I need you to never quit, because I know and I believe in you having an amazing life.
Okay, so this right here is very powerful, because there's a lot of kids that struggle with dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the signs? I mean, now, there's information's a lot quicker to get with Google and TikTok to self-diagnose.
Mm-hmm.
But for those parents that maybe aren't tech savvy, what are some signs that you were struggling? Now, did you know you had dyslexia, or it wasn't diagnosed for late?
No, I didn't realize that until I was maybe like 22, 23.
Wow. Okay, so it was a struggle.
Yeah.
So now reflecting back, and now that you've probably educated yourself on it, and you look back at child, what are some things that parents should look for? That, and not just your dad at disciplinary end saying like, no, you keep doing it. You sit there until you do it, which is what we normally do as fathers. But yet now you're bringing that you got diagnosed with this.
Mm-hmm.
What should parents be looking for?
That's, to an extent, I feel like that is a hard question to answer, because one of the things that I also would very much also always want parents to avoid is never catering too much. My mentor told me the story about this guy. I think it might be a book called My Left Foot, and it's about this kid who's just born with the left foot, and his dad never helped him with anything, not with climbing the stairs, not with cooking his food or anything. And he said, if I do help him, he'll always be looking for ways or excuses or reason why he can't do anything. But one of the things that did help me was counting in a straight line. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I would skip to like 15 and then go back to like 2 and things like that. And I learned to work around having it because the words in my head would make sense. And so it would be, I'm reading the story of a cat in the hat and I see the word dog in there. I'm like, well, dog's not in there. So that's probably another word. So looking ahead and then coming back to that word, I would have already worked it out in my head of this is what that word is actually supposed to be.
Wow.
So unfortunately, when the kid's really good at realizing he has it, even before he knows the word for it, he learns to work around it. But a lot of it is if he's struggling in school in general, don't look for the problem itself, but ask him what's going on. So yeah, for me it was, hey, let's read this. Okay, I'm struggling. Why are you struggling? Can you read this part? Can you read this part? And then just working around the issues in general of you are pushing them, but you're also being patient and listening, trying to figure out what's going on.
Okay, that's definitely some good advice, and just not forcing them, but really paying attention to what their children are reading and making sure compensating by getting good at reading ahead and then just filling in the words that make logical sense. Now, in your life, growing up, was there a lot of love? Did your dad express affection? Did he tell you he loved you? Did he hug you?
Yes, that I can remember. Yeah, I think, yeah, there was definitely like hugs every time I would go to school, come back. There was like dad, hug, kiss on the cheek. Something that always threw me off about it though was, even though it was almost like a religion to us, religion or tradition of just like, all right, that's dad, you hug, you give him a kiss on the cheek. But when it came to my siblings, we would not hug each other. It was like that. Growing up now and looking back, it's like, that doesn't make sense. You're affectionate with your mom and your dad, but not with your siblings. And I kind of started interpreting that as, well, that's because intimacy to me felt genuine, not a practice of sorts. And so when it comes into that, it's like, okay, I do greet my dad and I do greet my mom more of the out of respect and tradition. But when it comes to my siblings, it was like, do handshakes, high fives, and fist bumps. But again, it was because how we saw it was, we do that out of like respect and you're supposed to do that. But I think we viewed intimacy as, this is for a person that you genuinely cherish and care for. It's not that we didn't, but it's like, we don't do that. I'll tell you I love you. I'll show you the actions. I'll be there for you. But when it's like, hey, give me a hug, it's like, high fives.
Wow. You raise a very valid point. The respect that children show to their mother and father, but then when it comes to their siblings, they don't. So what are some things that your parents, particularly your father, could have put in place to make that love between your siblings genuine and authentic?
That's a hard one, because that's almost like forcing a relationship on somebody. Like, you're going to have a good relationship with them, and I tried that. It doesn't work. But I think one of the things that, in having the privilege to go ahead and visit other families, to hang around them and see what their home life is like, a lot of it is playing with them. Go play a board game with them, spend time with them, and encourage them to work with each other. So there was one of my friend's dads, something that he did with his sons. At first they were pitted against each other, but then he gave them a goal of, if you guys can beat me in this one thing, you guys can go here. And it kind of forces them to work together, because it's like, I may not like you, you may not like me, we may be at each other's throats, but I really want to go to like Disneyland or Legoland or something, so let's work together. And the more times you do that, the more they start to work toward, or better off working together than against each other. And then the dad would just slip little things in there of, this is your brother. Like, this is the person who will always have your back. This is your sibling who will always be there for you. It was a little behind the psychological of like, that was so cleverly done. And now looking at them, they're both in like adulthood, 18 and up, and they're the closest brothers, and you're just like, what?
Wow. That's beautiful. Now, let's talk about this play you're writing.
Yeah.
And the song that is in the play. Tell me about the inspiration behind this play.
Yeah, so particularly when I was about 16 or 17, my dad was not living with us at this point, and I was in my junior year of high school. We would get $3 for lunch every day. It was me, my two younger sisters, and my younger brother. And there was one particular day when going to school, I knew that we didn't have food. And I would do this often. One of the things that my dad did taught me when I was younger was entrepreneurship, which that was one of the most amazing things that even still lingers to this day of there's never a no. It's how can you do this? And so I went to Blockbuster one day. I was like, Dad, I want to get this video game. And he handed me $1. I was like, Dad, the game says $19.99. You're missing like a couple. But he was like, no, this is $1. If you know how to play your cards right, you can get 20. And sure enough, my brothers ended up selling candy and stuff. And then they taught me how to do it, went back and got it. So then now fast forwarding to my junior year, I would take the $3, spend $1.50, 50 cents on chocolate milk carton, and then $1 on 4 chocolate chip cookies. And I was like, this is going to be your lunch for your junior year, because you're going to take that other $1.50 today, and you're going to leave school during lunch to go to the store, and you're going to buy some candy, and you're going to fundraise around so you can raise money for dinner tonight.
Wow.
And yeah, moments like that I think that's what kind of set off the optimistic of, I can make this possible. So then when it came to the musical, it was like, this character has my story, but more intense in that he has to do this every day for his sister, and he doesn't have either parent.
Wow. Any final closing thoughts?
Just to remembering that humility in life is definitely like played the biggest role. I think it was when I was about 15 that I kind of grasped where I was with my parent and how different my life could be. And I remember praying at the end. This was after an argument. Both of my parents, they were just like, "Oh my gosh, like this is a problem here. This is a problem over here," and now they're like at heads with each other. And that was because I had spoken up about something. And then that bred an argument. So my siblings come to me and they're like, "Why would you speak up about that?" Like, that was a problem. And that was one of the things that played back. But I remember praying that day, and it was like, God, my parents are not doing a good job of raising me. Can you do it? And from that day moving on, that's when I realized, even still working through it to this day, there's nothing in life that does not matter. That one thing, that one little prayer that a 15-year-old made, it was like, that actually did drastically change my life. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to come down, I'm going to pull you up, and I'm going to take you or anything, but it's like it sets your life on a different course, and knowing that it can happen at any point, that's what got me.
What's a party message you would want to say to your father? Your father, if you do have conversation with him, you talk to him, but maybe something that you wanted to say to him, but it just feels awkward because, as children, we want to ask some things, we want to have these conversations, but sometimes our fathers don't know how to receive love.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to receive criticism. They dismiss, when you get to the core of their feelings and so forth, they're quick to like push it away.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you would want to say to your father that maybe you haven't expressed to him?
Like going between the things that I've worked through on my own, between like, would you still say things? Because I want to say to an extent, I cheated on the sense of I'm gonna work through this by myself so that I don't have to face my dad. And I got called out on it of that's a cop out. Go talk to him. But I think talking to him face to face, it would be letting him know like I did not have the best childhood. There were some things that were terribly wrong, things that at this point I do see, yes, this could have been done better. But I do know that there is no playbook to parenting. I know that you're doing the best that you can, and you did the best that you could have done at that time, what you had. Whether you feel you did a great job, yes or no, but despite all of the pain, all of the struggle, knowing that there were good things in there as well, I do want to say thank you, because I would not, whether I think it was a lot or a little bit, I would not be who I was today had you not sacrificed the way that you had you not provided for me the life that you did. It had nothing to do with I want to be the best, I want to be perfect, super dad, Superman, or whatever. It's like, thank you for being my dad. For that, I do appreciate it. Thankful for.
Wow. So when are you going to share that with you? Or you're just going to let him see the podcast? Wow. No, thank you for that. It was powerful. And now I want to end because you're going to do a little surprise for us. You're going to go ahead and play that song, which is your story of growing up and just how life was for in the song You and Your Sister.
Yeah.
So grab the guitar and then, you can just roll it. So I would love for you to give the impromptu how I found you, how you shared that intro, and then you dropped the story, because that's what caught my attention. And I just had to grab my phone, like, wait a minute, what did you just say?
Yeah. So initially I'm giving sitting at an open mic night, I come up and I'm literally telling the story about this song is called Carving Away. It's from the musical that I'm writing, Born Fighter. This particular, the child who has no parents comes home to a sister who is hungry from school and usually asking him for food. She says, nope, never mind. I know that you don't have money. I know that you don't have food. I know that we're not going to eat tonight. I'm going to save you the trouble of the discipline. Just going to go to bed. And in that moment, he realizes I'm not able to hide the horrible life that we have from my sister. This is it.
And that was your story.
Yeah.
And how you had to make money at school in order to put food on the table.
Yeah.
It's...
I know it's hard. I know that it's tough, but this is all. And it isn't much. Oh, I know the food every day is getting worse and worse. Every time that we pray, the more I feel life hurt. And we don't have the answers as to why we go through it all, why we rise and we fall, although we give everything, as to why we try to stand tall, never letting the tears fall down when we're crumbling. Well, I can't hide it all, and I can't share at all the daily wars I fight to get through. But don't worry, I'm carving away. I'm carving a way. I'm paving the streets with gold. One day you'll be there, in a place not here. moving ahead till the past disappears. I understand this is horrible, this isn't what you asked for. I know your heart and hurt, you deserve more. More than I can give, more than I can provide, more than all of my lies, when I'm promising tomorrow. You look away like you don't believe anymore. I guess you're old enough and mature to see what's really going on. Every time I'm arriving back home late, every time there's no food for the day, when I give my excuses for bruises, well, I can't hide it all, and I can't share at all the daily wars I fight to get through. But don't worry, I'm carving a way, I'm carving a way, I'm paving the streets with gold. One day you'll be there, in a place not here, pressing on until the past becomes unclear. It's getting hard, it's getting tough. Bearing it is one thing, for me at least, but watching you is too much. Because every day I could go to sleep in peace if I knew you were doing okay. But watching you when I'm powerless to bring change, it breaks me down in every way. So don't worry, I'm carving a way, I'm carving a way, I'm paving the streets with gold. Don't worry, I'm carving a way, I'm carving a way, I'm paving the streets with gold. One day you'll be there, in a place not here, pressing on through the storms that come in tears. And if I can't hide it all, even if I can't share at all, until my last breath I'll fight this through. Fight through for you.
Wow. Powerful, powerful. You know, just in closing, I knew that song impacted me when I heard it. And I didn't know why. I guess subconsciously I knew. It was because when I started my real estate career, I struggled. I had a family. And I was too task-based. That song really hits. And the song was medicine for me. And it's going to be a beautiful song for other people who are struggling. You know, things are hard out there. Things are hard out there right now. And I think this song can really resonate with fathers, you know, as the leaders of the household. And sometimes they struggle, especially when you're in entrepreneurship. And, you know, you're too proud to ask for help. To just let them know that it's okay. It's okay to reach out to family, friends, church, pantries, and so forth. So with that, wow, this has been an emotional Fatherhood Voices. Yeah, you just, like a flood of memories just came, all hit me at once. And I was wondering why that song resonated. That's why, it's because it's my story. It's my story when I was starting out.
You're able to ask for help, and this not just for fathers, but even as myself. The day I learned to ask for help is what did change. I want to say, when I was in school, I was probably in the church 24/7, like 6-7 days a week. A lot of that going to church initially came from my dad. When he was a pastor, he was like, "Hey, church, this be good. This is how it is." When we started going to a different church, I was going there every day. I would pray, but I would never speak up about anything. The day that I opened my mouth, it wasn't again until I was in my 20s, 23, and it was when it had finally gotten to the point of I can take more. Like, this is okay. I can bear this. The way that somebody flipped it for me of, yes, you can bear it, but how many people are suffering because you can bear it? And that one got me, not realizing the effect I was having on others, because it's like, I can take this, I'm strong. But what about the people?
Thank you. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story. And this is going to be a wrap for Fatherhood Voices, where we're helping fathers break the toxic cycle, but also bringing children on and adult children to share their stories about how their fathers showed and how it impacted their lives. And in your case, it was being silenced and not being heard. Thank you.